so handy that it tells you now, recording in progress. All right, cool. Well, here we go, Council Club. We are going over the agenda for this coming Tuesday, which is the 29th. So I guess just to kind of go over our basic goals, it's basically just to kind of talk through the agenda weekly as a group so that it's less intimidating and kind of, yeah, encourage more public participation and eventually more voter turnout so that when elections happen, there are more folks that have been paying attention the whole time and understand how important it is to elect decent humans who are responsive and, you know, just make good decisions. So there's no such thing as a stupid question. That's the other part of this, is taking the shame out of participation in local government. There's no need to talk down to anyone if they don't know something. This is just like, you know, a place where we're all learning together. We're not experts. Scott and I are just nerds who talk about the agenda weekly anyway, because we're really cool. No, we're not. But now you're really not cool with us, and we're all talking about it, and hopefully, you know, getting more folks to email their council representatives and ask questions and suggest that they make good decisions. So we have a few notes. You know, the first stuff involves like replats, stuff with the G and Leahy Mall. I guess the first thing that I actually have on my agenda, and as always, stop me at any time, hop in with questions. Again, no such thing as a bad question. If I breeze through something that you think is worth talking about, just either wave your hands or hop in or whatever. You about to say something? What?
Do it to screen share.
Oh, I guess I could screen share. So fancy.
Sarah, you know what I was just thinking about, like just now before I hopped on here, was so not just, I'm wondering how many people not only email their city council member on agenda items that are coming up, but just email their city council member about stuff that they see in the city. Like, I feel like I do this all the time. And I wonder if it would make, this is just a thing I was thinking about, but I wonder if it would make them like sort of just generally more responsive. Like if you're like for instance, we take a walk around our neighborhood every day, and now our daughter's too big for me to carry around, so she's in the stroller, and it's like impossible to walk in our neighborhood because of the sidewalks and cars parking on there, right? So it's like, it's not an agenda item or anything, but it's something that like I email our city councilor up about all the time. Like, how do I do things? How do, like, what's going on with this sidewalk that got torn out? What, you know, and I just wonder how many people do that. I don't know what the end goal would be, but it would at least be something like, if our goal is to make city government less intimidating and less, I don't know, nonsensical, right? And like also it would connect people to their elected officials. Like these are the things that, like, I feel like city council is, right, like it's everything in the city. So if something is bothering you in the city, you should just email your city council member and be like, hey, I'm curious about what's going on. Like, why haven't the bushes been trimmed at Lake James Park, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Do you get responses when you email about sidewalks and stuff like that? Because personally, yeah, I don't.
No, I mean, it's an interesting thing because like in my job, I've learned to ask really specific questions in order to try and get specific answers. Mm-hmm. But what I think is interesting is that mostly you get passed off to staff, which is fine. Like staff has been really responsive to me, and I just know now to email them instead of our city council member. But I don't know that that's like a particularly good way to build civic health or anything. And also I feel like I don't get like specific enough responses that would empower me to make change myself. Right, so you have to like do follow-up with like, okay, well, thank you for that answer, how do I do this thing that you said I should do? So yeah, and then I have some stuff to talk about TIF later, but we'll talk about that.
And I mean, I feel like the mayor's hotline is sort of the catch-all. If it's about the city, how often do you call the mayor's hotline for sidewalk or whatever?
I almost never call the mayor's hotline because I feel it's the responsibility of my city council member to do that work. Because that's why we have city council members to represent us specifically in our district and our interests. And I think it's a little bit more like vindictive, not vindictive. I don't want to say that, but I mean, I feel like it's like a good reminder to our city council people. It's like, you work for us, and I live in your district, and these are the things that I'm interested in. So I don't know. I think I've done the mayor's hotline once, and it was because someone didn't shovel their sidewalk forever and it iced over, and it was just really dangerous. And so I just reported that, and it got cleared up, but I don't know.
By the
Anyway,
sun.
that was my random thought, and I've just been thinking about it today.
No, that's good.
And I feel like for very specific things, like we saw a crosswalk sign that had been turned the wrong way. I think a car might have hit it. And so I take a picture, and I feel like if I could take a picture of it and point to it and make a really good description, certain things the mayor's hotline is not, I won't get a response, but it'll get fixed like pretty quick. I feel like sometimes I don't need a response. I know what's wrong, just fix it. Like, I think it's usually just like, this is something that needs to be fixed, or potholes. I feel like the mayor's hotline is basically it was the pothole app during Jim Suttle's day.
I think it depends on the issue, and like, then do you call the mayor's hotline? Sometimes full disclosure, I just fucking rant at the mayor's hotline. I'm like, here's another thing that you're not, and that's not probably productive, but sometimes cathartic. But the actual app, don't really feel like that's super helpful either. So yeah, I mean, my default has also, like you're saying, Aaron, been to email our council person, who used to be a little bit more responsive, and maybe will be again, I hope. But yeah, I think that that's a good point to just like get in the habit of having like kind of an ongoing conversation with your city council person, so they know where you're coming from and can address issues as they come up. And also, that comment about how staff is more responsive, like, yeah, a lot of times I will even just copy the city, like the clerk on it, and then they can point you in the right direction, or at least respond more regularly and efficiently, I think.
And I feel like Dan Esch, speaking of staff, or not necessarily, but on the county level, I feel like Dan Esch is
awesome,
super responsive.
Dan Esch is by far and away probably the best elected official in our county.
Yes.
And I'm saying that as an elected official in our county. He is by far and away the best of the best.
He got twice as many votes as Mayor Stothert.
Well, Spencer, I can tell you live in my neighborhood because I see lightning at the same time.
Yeah.
The other thing, watch out, because y'all could become, I don't know if you saw Larry's communication in opposition on this.
I sure did. Yeah.
He's got a real something up. I don't know. I think he's become somewhat jealous that he's not the only person who talks at city council all the time, and that's what's happening. But that's a psychological conversation we can have at a different time.
Reasonable. Yeah, no, that was definitely that was a fun one.
It was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah, change in font size. I should pull it up or not. I don't know.
No.
Oh, probably not. Okay. I think, the first thing that I was like excited about, Aaron, speaking about sidewalks, item number 30 is actually, and if anybody has anything they want to talk about before item 30, which I dropped the link to the agenda in the chat, in case you don't have it handy, I'll drop it again just in case anyone came in after I put it there. But we're looking at item 30, which is, okay, now this is the point where I will share my screen. So again, I got excited about this because it was a change order that actually had to do with curb cuts. And you know how I feel about ADA ramps and how the city of Omaha sometimes half-asses things when it comes to sidewalk infrastructure. And this was a time when they actually specifically said that they had to submit a change order because previously the curb ramps weren't included. I thought that was kind of just like, oh, all right, interesting. Who knows if it's because we have, contacted the state before about how the city sometimes does not do curb ramps at the same time, and they make excuses about how they didn't have the time or the money or whatever. But anyway, in this case, it's happening. Minor thing that I noticed, but sort of, in my opinion, good. The next thing is 31, that's $700,000 for street resurfacing on state highways. The city's going to take care of and then get reimbursed by the state. And part of it is actually Dodge Street between 52nd and 63rd, but everything else is out west. And then they also had like a little extra part that said, if there's any extra, here's a bunch of other streets we're going to try to sneak in, or not sneak in, but include, all out west. Okay, then, 34 and 35. So these are, if anybody was at the last meeting, 35 was postponed from last time. This was the one that Juanita Johnson wanted to postpone because she said she needed to get more information from her community about it. It is actually just like a pretty simple thing that was actually recommended by the, I think, Public Works and Planning, just a little bit of an amendment to, or approval of an application for allowing their doors to swing out. And again, it's in District 2, and Councilor Johnson decided that she wanted to look into a little bit further. There was a little bit of talk about how she's just kind of, maybe it's a personal situation, but it's pretty much the same type of a thing as number 34. So I was just thinking it might be interesting to see if 34 goes through without any conversation, and if 35 gets held up again, because they're kind of the same concept. So just.
And do you think that's what, so Senator McKinney posted on Facebook about just don't disrespect Juanita Johnson, that she was voted in by the people. And it sort of seemed to be maybe about this, because this definitely what got a little bit, I don't know, awkward was the right word, but.
Yeah, they very specifically, like, so Lavanya Goodwin was there with the developer, who I personally I don't like or respect.
The developer.
The developer. I don't have anything against Lavanya. But they stood up and were, Lavanya basically was like begging the city council to not let it just be between them and Juanita Johnson. So seems like there's some personal beef. I don't really know what the history is, but it'll be interesting to see if that does or doesn't move forward. It was postponed.
Oh, and Lavanya's commenting on Senator McKinney's, yeah, so that definitely was about her.
Yeah, I think that is a different person.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, but anyway, there is a lot of, yeah, there's a lot of scuttlebutt about whether or not it'll go through, and about if there's just personal beef and respect, and I don't know. Interesting, obviously Juanita Johnson got elected recently, so it'll just kind of be interesting to see how she does and how the rest of the council works with her and how the community feels. I don't know if anybody has anything to say about that, or we'll keep moving.
Bonnie, good of another one. Yeah, so I think just a second.
Yeah. Okay. So, 47, speaking of new council people, 47 through 52 are actually just gonna share my screen again, so that I feel like I should be able to do this quicker than I do it. Anyway, so as you can see, this is kind of when the mayor is, oh my God, where did it just all go? Thank you. 47 through 52. So new appointments to new boards and committees and whatnot. So Don Rowe is going to be a member of the Police and Fire Retirement System Board of Trustees. Begley, Johnson, and Palermo will be on this weird committee to see if there were any damages to, I don't know what this one's really about. Does Aaron, I feel like you know everything, not to put you on the spot, but this one is like damages to, I don't really know what's happening with that, but it's some kind of a planning board situation.
Yeah, it's a fairly benign thing. It's just a committee that's like responsive to people who, like it says in there, who are impacted by the city, changing alleyways or getting rid of streets or that kind of thing. So it's, I don't know, my feeling about sort of any of the committees on council, I don't know that they're particularly impactful or anything like that. They have a planning committee, and they have a public works committee, and they have personnel committee and all those things. And I just think it's I don't know. I don't really know much about it, but it seems fairly benign.
Yeah, especially that one. Like I had never even heard of that one. Some of them at least are like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that's a thing I've heard of, but that one I'm just like I
Vinny's
know what
been
the
on
land
it.
bank is, but I didn't know about vacation of any street or alley. I don't know. It just sounded
Yeah,
like
Vinny's been on it before, and it's come up a few times in council over the last couple of years, but
Yeah.
it's not that big of a thing. Although I love appointments on the city council agenda. I just love them. I think
Well,
they're great.
this is your agenda because there's a few.
I
What one are
know.
you most excited about? Because next we have Harding here with the retirement system situation, and then more, yeah, with Juanita Johnson, land bank, land revitalization. Oh, oh gosh, I'm even reading it incorrectly. Reutilization Commission. And then the only one that I thought was kind of interesting, again, I don't really know how impactful some of those will be, but I did think it was interesting that Ben Gray is going to be taking Tom Warren's position at Mecca on the board of directors. So I don't know if we want to
Is
talk
that a
about
paid position?
That's a good question. I feel like it is, but that's just I'm pretty sure our dogs heard your dog and we're like, what are we doing about this? Exciting times. Sorry about that. All right. Well, I don't really know. Does anybody else know if that position with Mecca is paid or not? I feel like everything involving Mecca involves money, but I don't actually know the answer to that. It is hard to say.
Well, so this is this is why I love appointments. I feel like they're always it's like the best place where I don't know if anyone's read ever George Washington Plunkett of Tammany Hall. Have you read this? It's like this big, so I would strongly suggest it. But it's this guy who was like high up in Tammany Hall, you know, that whole political graph machine in New York, and he's getting his shoes shined, and a reporter is just writing down everything he says. And one of the things is like about there's like honest graft and good and dishonest graft. And I love appointments for that reason, because it's just so very much like well, I guess you lost your run for state legislature against Tony Vargas, so you can be on the planning board, or you lost your seat in the state legislature to Michaela Kavanaugh, so now you're on the personnel board. And like, I don't know. I really enjoy it. I'm just not like a healthy person in any way, shape, or form.
It's good. That's exciting. Well, I'm happy for you. You're about to just watch a whole bunch of new appointments. That'll be, yeah, interesting to just kind of see the whole Tom Warren coming into the city and how that, I don't know, just changes things in general with the new chief staff for the mayor. So all right, the next on the list that we have to talk about, what are you trying? You're on mute. I don't know if you're
I'm talking to my dog and telling him to settle down.
Cool. We kicked ours out. Oh, they heard you say dog. They must have. They're barking again. Okay. 53 is park rules. So that is something that actually got kicked down the line. We went and spoke at city council. A handful of mode shifters did, and tried to make sure that the trails are going to be open 24/7. And so we actually chatted with the parks director a little bit via email over the last week. And he is suggesting that the city council continues to postpone this item until July 13th. So it still does say public hearing and vote today, though. So I don't really know if they are going to vote to lay it over to the 13th. I think that's what is going to happen. Frickin' dogs again. But anyway, so regardless, I think that, I'm meeting with the parks director on the 9th, but he's supposed to have the new language to me in the next day or so. But he is hoping that the city council will not actually vote on the new rules until the 13th. So we'll keep an eye on that. But there, he between Julie Harris of Bike Walk Nebraska and myself representing Mode Shift, we are supposed to act as the conduits between our organizations and the Parks Department. So if anybody has any additional information that they want us to pass along, or questions or feedback or whatever, let me know. I know part of the discussion that happened at the last meeting around park rules, some people were talking about how we need to talk to the neighbors that this will impact. It's like, you don't talk to neighbors about streets. Like, I don't know. I just really have a hard time with trails not being treated as transportation. Obviously, I sound like a broken record, but so there might be a little bit of pushback from some counselors who are concerned about that. And then the other comment from Counselor Johnson, she said that she really had to look into the impacts of trail hours on crime, which I emailed the Parks Director and copied Ms. Johnson and said, I've done some research and they are not related. And in fact, sometimes crime goes down when there are more people using trails more often, because it's good traffic, which more eyeballs on places generally helps keep things on the up and up. But we'll see how that will
It's so funny to me that they're so resistant to this, because it's like, lived in Chicago for 12 years and used the trail system. Like I lived on the lake, so use the lakeshore path. If you've ever been to Chicago, like constantly to move from campus to campus, and then lived on the river and like used the trail system out there all the time to get back and forth to and from campus, like late at night. And I'm just like, this, I never felt unsafe on these trails. Like I never felt unsafe. And like the other thing is man, this is another thing I drive around thinking about. It's like, if you really want to like decrease drunk driving, like let people be safe on their bikes.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
It just really doesn't make a lot of sense. And we talked about this, but it's like, why is it so, the resistance is so weird. It's so weird. And also in terms of the last council meeting, the parks director seems like a nice guy. Seems like he didn't deserve getting yelled at as much as he did. Not saying from you all, saying from like general, it really didn't seem like he deserved, I don't know, to be, I've got feelings, but that's for a different time on meetings that aren't recorded.
Okay, we hit stop recording at the end, so then you can really share your full feelings. But yeah, no, I chatted with him a bit after the meeting, and he moved here from Des Moines, and Des Moines actually has a pretty robust trail system, and they understand bikes as transportation a little bit better, it seems like, than Omaha, which, you know, doesn't have to really mean a whole lot, but better than Omaha. Yeah, there's a lot of work to do, and so we're going to keep on it, and we are going to hope to help them understand that it can be not a big issue and not something to push back on, and just something to be like, oh yeah, okay, we want to talk about safety. If safety and equity are really on your list of goals, then yeah, just let the trails be open. Anyway, I could talk for way too long about that agenda item, but I won't. Anything else on that before we keep rolling? All right. 55, I actually think that is like a direct, well, so it's about an electronic bidding platform finally, because if you've been following stuff for a while, there's a lot of snafus that could be solved by just like simplifying the process and making it, you know, not just on paper. So that is finally happening. Hopefully, it looks like there is a public hearing if you have strong feelings about it, and vote on Tuesday. So yeah, I know that Vinny Palermo has flipped out a few times. I'm like, if this was an electronic bidding system, we would not be having these issues. So happy for you, Vinny. You're getting what you want. All right. So then, oh, I did think it was interesting. Number 57 is with like Homeland Security and emergency management, and like it's like 90 grand, and it has a lot to do with night vision goggles and surveillance. So as per usual, just more money for toys for the cops. But if you dig into it, there's like a 12-part plan, and the majority of the money, like there's a little bit for like neighborhood watch, and we want to send people to a neighborhood watch meeting, and the national one, and you know, there's a few little things, and then the bulk of it, like 40 grand, is night vision goggles, and then there's another big chunk that is another type of camera, I believe. So for those of you who
When I accidentally saw night vision goggles for a canine unit, and so I'm Googling, do dogs wear night vision goggles? And I was trying, and like, turns out dogs can see really good in the dark. So it's for the handlers of the SWAT team that have canines, but the dogs will not be wearing night vision goggles.
Shoot,
Yeah.
that would have been so cute. Anyway, all right. All right, then speaking of money and police and incarceration, the next one, number 58, is the kid jail. It costs $75,000 for, and it's like for holding them before they even go to trial. It just sucks. I don't like a lot of, anything really involved with that whole project. But does anybody have any feelings they want to talk about when it comes to that?
What are they using the 10 million from the county for then? Seems like that's a lot of money that they stole from the CARES Act. I'm sorry, it's not CARES Act money, as was made very clear in the county board meetings. Although it's magically transformed
Whatever they say
into general fund money. I love it. I never had strong feelings about because it's just not my area of expertise, about the juvenile justice center kid jail until that moment. And I was like, this seems weird. I don't think that I just didn't have the room or energy to think about it. But then when it got wrapped up in all the other stuff that was happening at the county, I was like, oh, okay, we've got feelings now. That's how this works.
Yeah.
He also said it's not a kid jail.
Yeah.
He was very clear about that too.
Not a kid jail.
And definitely don't say kiddie jail. Like that was really like, no, don't say kiddie jail.
And definitely don't mention
child
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Right.
That'll cause some stuff too.
Have you noticed how, I know this is like city council, but like Douglas County is being run a lot differently, I think, now that Marianne Borgeson is the chair. She's like to the minute, and it just seems like it's a lot less conversation and a lot more
well, you know what they actually did, they have started doing a pre-board meeting, like pre-council. So I think that was Maureen Boyle's thing when she came on the board, but she was like, we should start doing a pre-meeting to get at least some of this out of our systems before we, because it's still open to the public, so you can still read the minutes and stuff. And they're good because they include the minutes of their pre-board meeting on their board agenda, unlike the city council. So, but yeah, so that a little bit of that has been taken up by, I think, pre-board meeting, which is a good model to an extent. Like, I think the pre-council model, so I've been going to pre-council for a couple of years, and so much happens in pre-council that like isn't being put out there. Like, you can go, it's totally open to you to go. It's a room of about like 20 chairs and all the department heads are in it. My dog just heard your dog.
Our dogs are gonna have their own Zoom call.
Yeah, they need to. But yeah, but I think that it's the counties, and because this is, I think, Dan's influence on the county, that they're just so much more transparent and responsive. Although I do think that a little bit their existence and their meetings themselves are a violation of the Open Meetings Act, just because they're such a mess. But whatever. You can spend a day.
Well, that's what, like Tuesdays, we've been talking about just making more of a day of it. It used to just be, I would watch some of the county stuff, but mostly like city council was my focus. But I've never been to a pre-council meeting, and that was super helpful. We very specifically relied on your tweeting when we were formulating some of our testimony as it, related to the parks issue. So that was super helpful. And then it just made us want to go because I think the more we can pay attention, or at least, unless you're just going to live tweet it all the time, because that's super helpful and then we don't have to go, but I don't want to put that all on you. No. But also, if you don't follow Erin on Twitter, what are you doing? Real helpful.
So yeah, you can make a day of it, like me and Larry and Luis, we all make a day of it. Yeah, I usually start at eviction court because it's in the first floor in courtroom 20, right when you come through, and then head up to county board. over to pre-council, county board if it's still going, lunch. Well, pre-COVID, I would walk back to my office and then come back for city council and ambush city council members outside. So yeah, you can make a day of it for sure. It's a good time.
Can those pre-meetings be recorded? Or are there rules against that?
I think that you can't, well, you can do whatever you want. It's open, it's privy to the Open Meetings Act because all the council members are together. So you can record whatever you want there. As far as I know, right? Like I don't think the Open Meetings Act precludes you from recording a meeting. So if there is a meeting, it's recorded. And you can also request the minutes from the clerk after the fact. Sometimes those meetings last 5 minutes, but like if there's big things on the agenda, they'll talk through everything beforehand and you'll get a good sense of where they're voting. And they'll also do things like, that's where they're, like if you watch city council and you're like, why is the head of this department here to talk on this and how do they all know it? That's what's happening in pre-council is they're like, I really want someone from city law down here to explain this. And I'm going to ask this question and, to give them that time to prepare for what's coming or to like further explain agenda items to people. But sometimes you'll get really interesting, like random things that come up, but like, so I think a lot of like, for instance, a lot of the tension last week or 2 weeks ago with Councilmember Johnson's question about the North 24th Street agenda item. I think that a lot of the annoyance that was being demonstrated, like awkwardness, but it was certainly, I think that there was some annoyance there, was that this should have been sorted out in pre-council. Those questions should have been asked in pre-council. And I think that that's where the annoyance was coming from, but that's really where a lot of that stuff happens. They do make it a point to not go too far into discussion in those meetings, one, because everyone has other things to do and it's like a really crowded room and it's very hot and there's just a lot of people in there. And I've really only seen, I think the only time I've ever seen like members of the public there besides myself was with the rental ordinance in 2019. And we had a lot of community members going to pre-council to hear what that was like. But I'm usually the only member of the public there, but you all are welcome. It's 10:30 in the city council offices in the conference room. There's never enough room for everyone. So I would suggest getting there early and making sure that you're wearing clothes that are comfortable to sweat in. Those are my suggestions.
I'm not going. I like get hot flashes these days and I don't need any more hotness.
Yeah.
As I like chug my LaCroix after LaCroix.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Well, it's super helpful that you're there. We're glad you are. And yeah, I mean, maybe I think once in a while we will maybe try to pop in just because I feel like, I don't know, I just like having eyeballs on them.
I think for important items like that, Parks would have been great, but again,
Yeah.
Aaron was there, so.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to be there. And I tell people all the time, like, I'm a lobbyist, but like not a real one, not one that gets paid a lot or wins anything, but like, like part of my, like, I think that when people get intimidated about accessing their city council members, like Tuesdays at City Hall, I mean, that's why they call them lobbyists. It really is the right place to stand there and be like, hey, and like grab people and be like, hey, I have an idea about that. I have thought about this. I just want to introduce myself or whatever. Because that's really what the work is. It's certainly emailing, but if you're at City Hall on Tuesdays, like you can grab basically anybody because they're all there. So I would just, if you have time, I know that it's totally inaccessible for a lot of people because it makes no sense, but if you have time, it's a great place to really ambush people and make your views known.
Easier to ignore an email than an in-person.
It's true.
Kind of put.
It's very true.
Yeah, good. Well, I've got a lot of feelings about sidewalks too, so maybe we can tag team Pete. So that sounded bad. We're not going to tag team Pete, but you know what I mean. We will Okay, moving right on. The annexation package is the next thing on my list, which if any of you follow Strong Towns, there's some good information about how basically annexation is a Ponzi scheme. And this particular package I thought was kind of interesting. And I don't know, like, I don't know. I have questions, but I have more. This is why we do this, because I have more questions than I have answers. But this particular package, and I think I've seen this happen before, it'll be like in this case, there's 3 different chunks of land that they're annexing together, and 2 of them cost the city money. And so it would not be a net gain over 10 years unless they pull in this other one that actually would. So, and I think the whole thing is they analyze the benefits to the city over 10 years because that's the only time it's profitable. And then it basically tanks. And then, we can't continue to just sprawl forever and act like this is sustainable. And it's just, aside from, road maintenance, which I love how they talk about, well, when we get to the casino TIF, we'll talk about how they're like, it's going to make everything better because we're going to widen roads, which never is the right idea. Anyway, this annexation shit. Okay, Brian's for endless sprawl, right? But anyway, so annexation, I'm always skeptical of it. And it doesn't make sense pretty much ever, in my opinion.
It makes sense for the developers.
Yeah.
Senator Matt Hansen had a bill to get rid of SIDs. Got a lot of pushback.
Oh yeah, really? Yeah,
Yeah.
Of course. Right. The people who run the city, aka developers, love these types of things, and they really don't benefit anybody but the developers.
Well, I think they also benefit a certain portion of, if you continue to annex, higher income, majority white census tracts, then that does pay off in a different way.
Yeah.
It is a Ponzi scheme, I think, and I don't know if we want to take bets on who the lawyer is who's coming up to represent this, because my guess is on Larry Jobin. Yeah, it's a weird situation. I've always floated the idea, not entirely seriously, that we should secede from West Omaha.
I seriously almost made secede Benson shirts when I had the shop, because I was like, even if we could just get Benson out of all that chaos. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, the idea that if we continue, the idea that's always presented, right, is that if we get rid of SIDs, if we don't annex, then we won't have the sort of robust tax base that sustains city services and these kinds of things. But when you think, that argument really falls apart when you're like, well, if that were the case, like I grew up in an SID in West Omaha, and I don't, that was 30 years ago. And it's like, have we solved then the East Omaha problem? Like, is that enough time, or like how long does it take for the benefits of these SIDs and annexation to accrue back to the faltering, I guess,
to the
tax
parts
base
of the city that actually need the help? Yeah.
And I find that argument is specious at best. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's they're gonna keep doing it no
Right.
matter what. We're gonna run out of land. We're gonna run out of we're just gonna run out. We know that. The city knows that because MAPPA has done this study, and we know this. By 2040, we're gonna run out of land. But I guess we can just annex Sarpy County.
Yeah.
You know.
Eventually, yeah, Lincoln and Omaha will just become one.
Yeah,
and
we'll just be one big thing connected by our love of the Trump flags off exit 143. Like that's just where we'll be.
right. We can dream. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Well, as long as they put in high-speed rail between the two cities.
That's what I was
then I'm
gonna say.
fine with
Maybe
that.
eventually it would turn into better transit. I'm not sure.
Man, they would make so much money off high-speed rail between Omaha and Lincoln. Like if you just like live in Chicago, the Metro, the amount of times that I use that to get out places, you put one of those between Omaha and Lincoln, you charge $10 a beer on game day.
That's what I was gonna say. If for no other, it would not be my personal reasoning, but you could
No.
like get people behind it if you talked about football. Like
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Drop them off right by the stadium.
Yes.
It would be amazing. Yeah.
I keep hoping that like somehow with the new regional transit authority, something like that may happen, but I don't know. I'm not holding my breath.
I have a poster in my office upstairs that says a Lincoln to Omaha commuter rail, an idea whose time has come from 1973.
Yes, exactly. Ah! So hard.
Anyway, let's move on.
All right, before my head explodes. Were you gonna say something?
No, I'm just saying, wow, I want to see that poster. That sounds cool.
Yeah,
I don't. It sounds
I
sad.
got it at the train expo in Council Bluffs like 5 years ago.
Cool. All right. Okay, so that was 60 through 62, which is the annexation. And then they tell you that there's not going to be a meeting on July 6th. And then we look forward to what's happening in the future. So number 65, I think, is that a typo? Usually, okay, I'm going to share my screen because I really do have some confusion about this. Okay, usually when they rezone, it means not the same words. Does anyone else know what that's about? Like, why is it mixed use to mixed use? It's usually like,
MU to DR.
right, usually it's, yeah, mixed use to something else. But this one is just not anything different. So
Even the ordinance says that.
right, yeah. So don't know what that's about, but these are just the fun little nitpicky shits that I find on the agenda to ask Aaron about, basically.
I just thought that it was because they were giving up part of their land for drainage. Like they had to cut apart the part that was closest to the street to allow for drainage because they were gonna cover the whole thing with a storage unit. So they had to offset the drainage somewhere. So I thought it was really just replanting that.
Okay, well, that sounds better than what I thought, which was like a very extensive typo that doesn't do anything. So, all right, sounds good. Way to figure that one out, fine. Yeah. I
Hey,
just
here's a
usually-
random question. Has anyone at all in the media, and I don't mean the World Herald, but sort of like generally, you know, all those different news outlets, have they wrote about the eminent domain situation in Northwest, like Bennington, basically? That the Army Corps of Engineers, so this has been happening in county board and it spilled over to city
Dam site
council.
10?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so the Army Corps of Engineers wants to flood all those farms, those
Yeah.
existing farms that people live on.
yeah. And the farms are like, no.
Yeah, but they've been fighting this for a year and a half
Yeah.
in the county and it spilled over to the city and no, I haven't seen anything about it. And I talked to county board members about it just because I was interested, but some of the county board members are like, there's a developer behind this trying to get a lakeside
Yeah.
subdivision. But I haven't seen anything. Has anyone done this? Or, okay,
Not
well,
not that I have seen either, but I mean, we definitely were at that meeting.
yeah,
Kind of
it's
recently.
this,
You were probably
it's the same people. It was like
Yeah.
3 weeks ago. It's the same
Yeah.
people who've been showing up over and over. And it's like, I actually think it's like a perfect encapsulation of how things work. Cause it's like this train,
Don't
they intervened exactly when they should have as a group of citizens, when the Army Corps of Engineers was supposed to hold public hearings or public meeting on this with the neighbors, and their concerns were not met. And then it just kept going forward. And at every single opportunity, these neighbors and these citizens have tried to intervene and like step up and say like, listen to us, and have not once been heard because it's just like the train just keeps going.
Mhm.
So I really, if anyone knows anyone who's interested in that, I would really be interested in,
Yeah.
in hearing more about and digging into that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's always, I feel like, reporters reaching out to me about mode shift stuff, but I feel like I could be like, hey, what do you know about this? Could be a story, because they keep, again, like you said, they keep showing up and it keeps seemingly going on. I don't know.
I talked with Eric Williams about it. He said that he thinks that the NRD is going to are they going to do a study, but that he doesn't think it's going to get approved.
Yeah, because there's too many, gratefully for them, too many vocal landowners that are like, no, you can't do that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brian, you
Larry
got-
Bradley keeps showing up and I think he's on the NRD, so.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That was just my random question.
yeah, no, that's good. Keep them coming. Brian, what do you got your hand up for there, sir?
I was just trying to figure some of these things out too. So I have a picture of the Greyhawk one, the MU to MU. So if you want to pull that up, or if you want to share my screen here.
Yeah, I'm gonna, man, okay. So when I click on you, oh shit, I don't want to lower your hand, although that doesn't really matter. How do I used to thought I had a little thing where it said I could allow you to share screen, and now I don't see that. I could
If
make
you
you
have
the
the share screen button, like
Yeah.
down at the bottom, there's a little up arrow next to it.
and then I can just hit multiple participants can share, or what?
Well, I'm used to a enterprise account like education. Ours says something like who
Yeah.
can share, host only or all participants.
Okay, I'm changing it to, okay, see if that works for
And then
you.
close it.
Does that make something magic happen? Yes.
So this is what we're trying to do, right? Just try to understand some of these issues.
Yeah.
So it says here in the notes, existing zoning MU and proposed zoning MU lot 1 and DR outlots A and B. So while it looks like it's converting MU to MU,
Mhm.
it's really MU to lot 1 and DR to A and B. So what they've got up here is A, and down by the street is B. So
Hmm.
really what they're doing is they're consolidating the MU to the middle portion for this storage facility. And then all that drainage now has to go somewhere. So they've got this outlot B that they've found room here to allow for that drainage. So it's really converting MU into MU and DR for lots 1 and A and B.
You cracked the code. Okay,
Yeah, makes
cool.
sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Nicely done. This is good.
I took a lot of classes in CAD and I went to school for architecture, so I like to dig into some of the drawings.
Perfect. Good. Cool. Thank you. All right. Excellent. What else do I have on here? Oh, we could talk about TIFF. That is that's
Feelings.
weird.
Feelings.
Bring them. You've come to the right support group. This is basically a TIFF support group now. Bring your feelings.
Okay, so a few things, and I had DM'd both you and Scott about this. So I've learned some things. First off, I used to just email planning and ask them for the TIF applications. So there's a public portion of TIF applications, and then there's a not public portion of TIF applications. And just in case anyone has ever tried to find TIF applications like me, if you look at the planning board agenda, there is no link to any sort of application or anything like that. And the case number that's attached to a planning board agenda does not match a case number anywhere else. The same thing happens at the property maintenance appeals board, but that's a different situation. So I have always just emailed planning and asked for the TIF application, or like if I needed it before it showed up on a city council agenda. So I asked most recently for the Warhorse Casino TIF application, and I got it. And then I was told in a follow-up email that I now needed to make open records requests for these TIF applications, which is fine. So I've sent out a test balloon on an already existing TIF application. Now, one thing, I don't know if anyone digs into these, but the TIF applications or the TIF documents attached to anything on the city council agenda aren't always consistent. Like you're not always getting the same thing. Like one of these is just the redevelopment agreement. Another one is like the application that describes what it is.
Yeah.
And there's just not a lot of consistency. So that's really interesting to me. Also, the fact that I've been told it's a public records request thing at this point, which is fine. Like
No,
I'll just,
I don't
yeah,
think
it's
that's fine. I think
No,
that's
I mean-
not fine. And I think you're being
No, so-
facetious.
So what I think is interesting about it is, if there's no way to access the public portion of a TIF application before it shows up on a planning board agenda, or before it shows up on the city council agenda, how do you participate in the process as a member of the public when it goes to planning board? Because planning board is not required to release their agenda, as any open meetings for 24 hours prior to the meeting, which is not enough time to make an open records request. So I'm just like very confused as to what's going on. And again, like, I don't think that there's a lot of ill intent going on. I think it's just something that's happened. And,
I think
it's
that
just
people have started asking a lot more questions about TIF.
yeah.
And so I think that they're like, we don't really like that. And we're going to put an extra barrier
Yeah.
that you have to hop over to get to TIF. And my other question on that is, do you think that there's any point in even like talking to the planning board about TIF? Because I feel like every time anything almost comes to the planning board, they're like, we're just here to make sure that the forms are filled out right. Talk to city council, because that's who actually makes decisions.
So this is the interesting thing to me. So a couple of years ago was at planning board a lot, talking about TIF. And I started to I've told this to a couple people, but it's like, I've started just ending my testimony at planning board. This is when I was serving on the Benson Neighborhood Association. So I was there in my role there. But I just started telling them, like, ending my testimony with, I am now available for any patronizing comments or condescending questions you may have. Like, that's what I'm here for.
Yes.
And I think that the interesting thing is that by the time it hits planning board, it's a done deal.
Right.
Like, and that's what I think is why I want to like access to these applications beforehand.
Right.
I'm also married to a developer, so like I understand how this like can all sort of happen, but it's like, I don't know what the avenue is for this, but it's like, can we get the planning board to at least put a description of the project in their agenda so that we have some sort of basis for showing up? Like, is it, because you get sort of somewhat more detailed information on these TIF projects in the city council agenda, but even so, like, if you're just looking at 76, it's like, oh no, that's not a good example because you're retaining a single family home. But like, if you're building an apartment, it doesn't always say like 140 market rate units or a mixed use building of 120 low income versus,
Right.
like, it doesn't always say those things. So I'm just interested in what kind of advocacy we can do around just like, at least just putting some transparency around this. So we're not all, because as you well know, by the time you show up at council to talk about TIF, it's like very dismissive and it's already a done deal. And it's like, well, you don't know how TIF works, for one, which is
Amy
whatever.
Hamilton. Yeah.
Well, just anyone. I mean, and it's fine. And, I don't claim to be an expert on TIF, but I also, I understand the community development law and the statute that governs TIF. And I know that it specifically mentions human beings in it. And that's what I'm interested in. So it's like, I don't need to know all the ins and outs of the capital stack to understand that like what's happening is not particularly good for like the community or civic health. And so I just am wondering, like, I don't know, it's something I've been mulling over in my mind since I got the like open records request link back. And then
That's
just like, I don't know how we build more
transparency ahead of
time, because by the time you get to city council, it's done. I mean,
Where
these
do you
things are
think it's
done.
not done? Because I think once it's at planning, it's done. And I think definitely once it's at city council, that's just another rubber stamp. So like, where is the point where you can impact it?
Yeah,
Especially
I don't know.
when you don't have access to the records without the records.
Well, I'll tell you what, so the city does have a website that lists every single TIF application that's ever been put in front of city council since the inception of the community development law. I'm sure Scott's seen it.
Yeah, I didn't know that was by
Yeah.
the city. I thought that was just a individual. Maybe there's another one that I feel like.
No, the city's done it.
Okay.
The city has it. I'll find it. I was going through it, and what I thought was interesting about it is that when the community development law was put in place, there were a lot more projects that were focused on the sort of human element,
the reason TIF was designed in the first place.
Yeah, to not just like build market rate, but to truly like try to lift up the community by making housing more accessible or economic development more accessible, as opposed to like imposing a vision of housing and these kinds of things on the communities that are impacted enough to be declared blighted under the community development law. So I don't know what happened, but I think like in the last 10 years, like in my looking at the TIF applications, and I'm happy to be pushed back against on that, but it's like in the last 10 years, we've just forgotten it. And I don't know what we do. I don't know where to intervene, but I think I mean, for me right now, I think that it's putting pressure on city council members to ask more reflective questions in the council meetings. I'll never run for city council, but like if I were on city council, the kinds of things that I would ask about any TIF project that came in front of me is I would just say like, what's stopping you from putting affordable housing in this project? And if they're like, well, it just doesn't make the
ROI
finances
doesn't-
work.
doesn't work.
Yeah, if it just doesn't make the finances work or something like that, then the follow-up question would be, what would the city have to provide? What would the city do? What could we do that would incentivize you to do these things? Like, what is it? Right. And like force that conversation to happen in the public eye instead of dismissing concerns about affordability that happens all the time in these TIF conversations. So it's like, if we just had someone on city council who could ask those kinds of questions of every single TIF project, like that's what I would do. I would just say, listen, I'm going to ask this question of every single developer, every single person who comes in front of me. So someone needs to come to me with an answer at some point, like, because it's not going away. So come up with an answer or don't, and then we can act on it.
And then,
course,
because I feel like right now the city says, well, it's the state that writes the requirements. And so it's that whole not it game that you see all the time, That's how
Well,
I
that's why
feel.
we wrote a law. I heard that thing in city council, so I wrote a law about it.
Yeah, yeah.
We passed it. It's part of
Yeah.
the urban affairs package. The city can now mandate affordability requirements in
Can.
residential TIF projects.
But
you can do
won't.
it. You can. But that's, I think the thing is like, okay, so if that's the answer that comes back, then we can do something about it. But we're just not asking those questions. So like, I don't know where to intervene, but to me, I think going like circling all the way back to the beginning of this conversation is like, our city council members work for us. And if we're demanding these things, then they need to find the answers. Like that's what you got elected to do, was to find how to solve the problems that concern your constituents. And that's what I mean, from can you please fix the sidewalk? Can you please get a curb cut to can you please take care of my neighbors who are becoming homeless? Like that spectrum exists as an elected official. That's just what you have to do. So I think like I'm all for like finding backdoor interventions and that kind of thing, but at the same time the city needs to step up and make this a priority, I think. So
Yeah. And
That's
I think that
my
during this-
personal opinion.
no, I think that obviously I agree. And I think that there's a lot of folks that do. And I think that during this last election cycle, a lot more people were paying even more attention to a lot of these conversations, especially around affordable housing, and listened to the excuses of the city council about TIF again and again. And so, yeah, I think that I don't really know, you talk about asking specific questions. And so, yeah, maybe just if enough of us, I don't know, I get so freaking disappointed and like discouraged because I feel like it's easy to ignore when there's only like a few of us asking questions. But we did an interesting experiment with the little council club crew a few weeks ago about emailing council people asking about how to not have to say your full address when you testify. And then also asked specific questions about how to move the meeting so that at least one of them a month was at night.
You saw the sign they put outside city council now, right?
I don't know. I probably walked right by it because I just go right in.
So this might be in response to and so one thing I will say is I actually think that even one person, reasonable person emailing and calling a city council member actually has a lot of impact. So I wish more people would do it, but I think it does have a lot of impact. So if you were at city council 2 weeks ago, or last week, you saw the sign on the table before you go in that basically said, like, if you don't give your full address, we can fine you $500 and put you in jail. Like, it was like, it like listed the specific statute and like all these kinds of things. I think it'll be up for a while. So I don't know if that was a result of yours, but I thought it was a fairly interesting addition to the table where the agendas are now.
Does seem to be perhaps a direct response.
Well,
Interesting.
Luis Jimenez tried to give the
county, yeah, like he said,
The Civic Center, yeah.
It's like,
and then he got a letter, or he got an email from the city law department saying that he gave false testimony.
false information.
That's what was outside the thing is that it's.
And they
it's
chose
considered
not to
giving
fine
false
him,
testimony.
but they could have.
Yeah.
It's a misdemeanor, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's outside the city, where the agendas sit now.
How funny. No, I just breezed right by there.
So
Interesting.
if I feel like we need to do someone who doesn't have an address.
Yeah.
We need
What
to
if
find
you're
someone
unhoused
that
and you
doesn't.
want to testify? How does that work?
I did see that happen in the mask debate, the mask mandate debate. And it was a person who was homeless and he ended up giving the address of Sienna Francis.
That's right.
That's what we had wondered if that was a.
Yeah, him and Larry became friends.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
Yeah, I think I follow him on Twitter. I think he's got a Twitter handle.
so he ended up giving the address of Sienna Francis. So
Interesting. Okay, so what if you're in a domestic abuse situation and you don't want to give, like, I don't know. I just have questions about privacy.
no, I think you're right. And the legislature doesn't require, I mean, they require it, but it's a paper form, which you could do,
Yeah.
like right? Like if you go and testify at the legislature, you just fill out a form that then goes, and it's not really published anywhere. And you can fill out obviously your organization, but your business address, like lots of people do. But I don't know why it would be difficult to implement a paper form system because they did do that. When you have really contentious items, they do switch it up and let you sign in
sometimes you
and
have
do
to
that
sign
kind of
in.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you're right. I think these are all really good questions. If they do need to be changed at the state level, Senator Carol Blood's really interested in Open Meetings Act.
That's good to know.
Open Meetings Act stuff. And
Because-
she used to be on the Bellevue City Council, so
Oh,
good know.
that's right. Okay, that'd be, maybe I should bug her then. Because some of the varying responses that we got when we asked those questions as a group, some folks got responses saying our city law department is reviewing it, and then some people said it's up to your state senator. So I don't know what the right answer is. We just thought it was interesting that we got a variety of answers. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if it's the not it thing, then let's write a bill. That's fine. Let's put it in. It's okay. Like it's not. I don't think that would be a heavy lift.
I would be super interesting in figuring out how to make it so that you don't have to give your address in front of, especially like I know that last summer when a lot of folks were testifying like against the police contract or the police budget or something like that, and then you hear of activists being targeted, it's like, if they want to find your address, maybe they can, but also if there's some like, Nebraska Young Republicans who want to just be dicks and then they have your address. I don't know. I just feel like it's something that should be, hopefully could be changed. I don't know. And then again, like domestic violence situations, there's just a lot of reasons why I don't think that I know, again, like a lot of the stuff with this council club business is to try to lower the barriers. Like what can we do to make sure that more folks feel comfortable? And one of the things that I've heard over the years is like, I don't want to stand up there and give my address to whoever's watching.
I mean, I feel uncomfortable with it if I testify as I usually give my organizational address, but if I testify as a private citizen, I have no particular interest in being targeted by people who would take that information.
Yeah.
Well, it's also just like generally like it's not really anybody's business.
Yeah, like, or
Um,
maybe just, can you just give your zip code or something like that? That's not like.
Or just
so
say what district you live
point.
in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something that's a little bit less specific to like, here's where you can come to my door and leave hateful messages on my porch. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Then it's put in the journal. It's put in the journal, like, and that's searchable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, at the legislature, you know, you spell your name and then you fill out a form that has your address on it, but I've never seen that. I've never seen it in public transcript. And it's also, this is all to say that I don't think this is all required, right? But you have to specifically request, like, from the committee clerk who testified and on what, and, you know, so I've gotten that kind of stuff, but even so, that the address isn't listed. So there's really not a lot. I don't think that there's a statutory, if the legislature's not doing it, there's not a statutory reason to make that known. But I think you're exactly right, Sarah. Like, there are a lot of situations. We ran into this with the rental ordinance, that we had tenants who didn't want to testify about their landlords because so yeah, I think that's a really interesting problem. I'm going to work on that for you.
Love you. Yay. Thank you. Let me know if I can.
And I'm going to talk to my open
somebody or
meetings
whatever.
act experts and figure out what's
Yeah.
going on. But I think that that's exactly true. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I've had somebody show up to my house, and I would like to rule out that they got my address from city council, because, you know, I don't know if that's where they got it from, but I'm a renter, you know, I don't own this house, so I don't know how they would have figured it out otherwise. But
Yeah, you can't get rental info. Like, David, I work with the rental registration all the time, and I can get your landlord's information, but I don't know who lives in whatever property you're getting. So, yeah.
I blame city council, and I would like to not. Cool.
I mean, I think that's a perfectly valid thing to pursue. Hey, I have to jump off here. And
Yeah.
Addie, I don't know the answer to that question. I actually think, if I remember, yeah, you can't use a PO box. That was also specifically stated on the.
Yeah, Linnell Quinn tried that.
People have tried to do workarounds because, you know, when you're talking about stuff that gets pushback, a lot of folks don't want to. So good question. And no, if you're, you know, if you have a business, you're privileged enough to be able to use a different address. That's one thing, but you have to have a physical.
If you're representing an organization and you only have a PO box as an organization, then, like, would you give your your personal address that, like, because I personally live in Ralston, so city council meetings are in Omaha aren't necessarily, like, relevant for me, but I'm representing an organization that serves Omaha and has board members residing in Omaha and all that. So
I think that there has to be some kind of thing. I mean, like, even with voting, you know, we allow people to register at shelters. So, like, for my organization, we have lots of people who who are homeless, who are street homeless, and we allow them to use our organization as their mailing address for anything that they need. Yeah, now thinking through this, I'm like, this is even more ridiculous, and we should really not do that. So
Yay.
yeah, okay, so I'll talk to some people about that. I gotta jump off and actually eat my dinner that I got.
Yeah, we usually go to 8:30 and we're talking a lot. It's so exciting. There's so much to talk about, and this is a fat agenda, but thank you, Erin. The rest of us will wrap up here quickly, but
yeah, well, it's good to see everyone.
Yeah, you
Thanks
too. We'll
for
talk
being
soon.
Involved.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll bother you shortly. Thank you.
Whatever you need.
Awesome.
Anytime.
Thanks,
See ya.
Okay, so I just have to bring up number 82. The organization that's applying for TIF is called Bread Pudding, and I just think that's silly, and I wanted to say it. Okay, then number 83 is actually good news. It's the extension of the OPD mental health co-responder program. Although I still don't want it to be a co-responder. I want them to show up without weapons, but whatever, I guess it's, and I think that when that happens, I will stand up and that, because that's the thing, like for those of you who have not spoken at city council, you have to have an agenda item to speak to. So you can't just stand up. Like county, you can actually speak about something that's on your mind that's not on the agenda, but that doesn't hold true for city council. So if you want to talk about police issues, you have to find a police related item number to talk about. So the co-responder thing is item 83, if you want to look at that anymore. 84. Oh, go ahead.
One sort of good thing, I was talking to somebody who's been advocating for cahoots here for quite a while.
Yeah.
He was telling me about how he knows some people who are in this co-responder program, and like they do have like teeth and can push the cops around, and like, so that's just positive, you know.
Good.
Like, also I would like it to be completely separated from police eventually.
Yeah.
But it's good to hear some good news on that front.
Yeah, that is good. I tweeted at Marianne Borgeson because she had brought up cahoots a while ago. And I was like, what's the latest with that? And she said it's still in the works, but I don't actually remember what the holdup was, but I'm going to keep on that because I think that that's a valuable program that would kill.
Recently, Lincoln, city of Lincoln is, they're paying money to cahoots to train them on certain things. So like, this is what it can look like.
Yeah. Once again, we don't even have to look to the coasts to be inspired. Lincoln, Lincoln's doing a lot of good things, like their environmental plan. Anyway, yeah. Okay. So, speaking of police, number 85 is a 6% special pay raise for an executive deputy chief of police. So when the Todd is away, this new deputy chief can step in and he gets more money. 86 is money to actually process sexual assault kits, which is about time. I don't know if y'all saw in the paper not too long ago, there was a story about how like we totally are negligent and are not doing a good job with reporting of assaults, let alone processing rape kits. So hopefully this will at least maybe make that not as depressing. 87 is more money for police. It changes probation specifically in areas with gang issues. And then 88, the final thing on my list was just about how it was another reaction to what was happening. I don't know if y'all saw a couple weeks or months ago when Blue Cross Blue Shield and Medica both had their bids rejected because of, or there was talk about, I don't remember, did they end up rejecting them? No, they let them slide.
Yeah.
There actually was one of the few times where it wasn't a 7-0 vote. The board was, or the council was split on whether or not to let Blue Cross Blue Shield and Medica move forward with their bid because they submitted a business check instead of a certified check or something. Anyway, so that's a reaction to that, changing how that can be done. That is kind of all I got, except for then Scott had some feelings, and I know we're almost at 9 o'clock, which that's crazy. But Danny Begley is still on the NRD board, and we kind of thought he was going to step back from that board when he took over as city councilor, and he has not.
And actually, their meetings, they have 2 meetings a month. And one of them is Tuesday at 4 p.m. So he, by default, is going to be missing half the meetings. A couple of them, luckily, some of the city council meetings, like July 6th, there's no city council meeting, so he's going to be able to attend that one. But he's, it's basically up to Danny Begley if he wants to stay on the NRD board. They don't cancel each other out.
He doesn't have to resign. Some positions I don't know if you have to resign. Mostly it's just like you assume that they will. And a lot of times.
When Craig Moody was running for the same seat, District 3 City Council, he's on the OPPD board, and he was going to step down, not because he had to, just because it's the right thing to do. And so Danny Begley is not stepping down. And we were talking about parks last week, and specifically park trails and the NRD. He should have spoken up. And we're actually in, Danny Begley is our NRD district representative. We're in District 7.
So we're going to email him at his NRD email address to be like, yo, bro, let's talk about trails and why didn't you say anything? Yeah, so just an interesting thing with the not conflict of interest, but kind of just like pick one maybe and do a good job at one of them.
Yeah, there was during the candidacy, Sarah got asked a couple of times, like, if he were to get elected, would this be your full-time job? And of course, Danny Begley just didn't go to any of the forums, so they never asked him this. But not only does he have a full-time job at OPPD, he's on the city council and the NRD. So he's doing all three sort of just half-ass and sailing through. So yeah, I think someone needs to call him out on that.
And that concludes this week's City Council Club. Anybody else have anything else they want to say before I hit stop on the recording. All right, well, I'm gonna hit stop on the recording.